Hi again then guys, and so the time has arrived for us to take our first look, or at least my first look on the channel, at the 1.47 October update in GT Sport with the 4 new cars, Spa and weather, and a couple of other smaller things such as new Spa Escapes locations, for instance. Now, the 4 cars are of course the Porsche Taycan, the Aventador SV, the Mercedes 300 SEL, and the Mazda Demio. Now, pricing-wise, some of the rough predictions that I had for the cars did turn out to be pretty close. I thought the Porsche would be 200 grand. It's 230, so that's pretty close. I said that I thought the Mercedes would be anywhere between 1 and 10 million. It is 2 million. Now, some people have been a little bit disappointed by that. I can understand that, I guess. It's not quite as, over the top as some of the other high rollers are, but at the same time, if you are a high roller fan, or maybe if you're trying to break into a slightly cheaper category of high roller, like the more GT40 level, or even this level machine, this one will not let you down. I have to say that as far as handling and how it feels and how authentic it is to drive, this one is probably the best of this update. It feels old school. I love the way it bounces around through corners with those thick, chunky tyres. It feels fantastic to drive. The closest thing in a racing game that I've had to this before is probably the road version in Forza, which of course is the 300 SEL 6.3 AMG, which is just the road car. That feels great anyway. This one, of course, is a totally different animal. It is pretty heavy. It's over 1,600 kilos. You're looking at just over 420 horsepower. It is Group X. It is 2 million, so there are certainly things to complain about if you want to. My overall thoughts, though, are that I like the car. I'm glad they brought it to the game. And, hot take here, I would all day, every day, take this thing over a 300 SLR. Any day. And I know there are a lot of people who would not agree with that in the slightest, but for me, I find this one of the most interesting classic Mercedes racers. Easily, it's such a cool car, such an iconic one, and also I love how it brings almost like a touring car vibe to the high rollers, where most of them are more GTs and sometimes even borderline prototypes. Next up then we have the Lambo, the Lamborghini Aventador SV. A number of people, myself included, found it a little bit curious that they chose to add the SV instead of the more obvious SVJ. Of course, that is a kind of irrelevant argument because you can't change it now. They've added the SV, so that's the version that we've got. I'm not an Aventador fan. I never have been. I know a ton of people love it. For me, it's just been one of those cars that's kind of overhyped. To me, the Murcielago always lived up to the hype. It was such a good car in all of its forms. The LP640 was my favourite. This one though, to me the Aventador always just felt a little bit too heavy through corners, a little bit overhyped in terms of performance. It didn't really match up to the raw power. If you compare it, for instance, to something like a Huayra in Gran Turismo, it's not even close, even though both of them have, in some ways, a similar spec. Now, in terms of how good this one is, I drove it in the rain, which of course you can see a couple of these cars being showcased on Spa. I love the way it feels in the rain. At the same time though, I did drive these cars with very minimal tuning, so I wanted to feel what it's like straight out of the box, in other words, and with that applied, although as you can see you can, pull the e-brake and get it to drift, it doesn't really feel like it wants to play around. And although that could feel good, what I mean by that is the front end almost feels like it has a little bit too much grip. It actually makes it feel like it's got almost like a 55-45 split towards the front end. Almost like it's more front-wheel drive than rear-wheel drive on the exit of corners. I'm not a fan of that, to be honest. It kind of gives it similar handling sometimes to the Nismo LMP car. And although I do like that machine because it's different and oddball, for this, it just doesn't really work as well for me. It is moderately weighted. It's 1,525 kilos. It is powerful, of course. You can tune it up much higher. And in terms of the pricing, it's a lot more than many of us were expecting. I was expecting about $500,000. It's not. It's more than double that. It's 1.2 million. So it's a pretty expensive car. Not quite as much as the Mercedes, but still it's up there as far as supercars in the game go. If you are looking forward to the Lambo, I think you'll like it. It looks the part, it sounds the part. It's exactly what it is. It's an Aventador turned up to 11. That's the whole point. So if you're looking forward to it, of course you will enjoy it because you pretty much already know what you're getting. It's just that, an Aventador that's more hardcore. As far as the Porsche, this is probably my favourite overall car from the pack, and one of the reasons why is because I've actually become more and more of a fan of Porsches in recent years. For many years, I was kind of just lukewarm on them. The Carrera GT was easily the standout for me. This one though, and also the Porsche Panamera Sport Turismo, which is the wagon version, they really caught my attention, and I really like what Porsche is doing right now. They are actually currently testing a prototype wagon version of this as well in real life, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what that can do. The only unfortunate thing about this car, and no, I'm not going to say Group X because that's obvious at this point, the unfortunate thing is that it doesn't have any real rivals in the game. And you're probably thinking, well, wait a second, we've got the Tesla, so it surely does have a rival. But not really. The Tesla came along before Tesla was using dual motors, so it's the rear-wheel drive model, it's got nowhere near the power, and it's completely outdated in terms of performance. So, in comparison to this, it doesn't stand a chance. Top speed's like 135, this can do over 160, so it does not stand a chance against this. As far as tuning, if you are interested, it's pretty heavy. It's the heaviest car of the pack. Not surprising for an electric vehicle, just under 2.3 tons. You can drop the weight though. Interestingly, you cannot upgrade the car, you can only move the sliders a little bit. So, in other words, the power and the weight are stuck on level 1 and you cannot change that, but you can drop the weight and you can increase it a little bit, and you can also decrease or increase the power a little bit as well, with a peak of 788 horses. So, overall, I like the Taycan. It handles well, it's not as tail-happy as a Porsche could sometimes be, although you can definitely get the tail out if you want to. I love the way it looks, I actually like the sound as well quite a bit, and as I said, I like what Porsche's doing right now, especially when it comes to their practical cars like this one. Now, overall, of course, I would recommend sticking around on the channel over the coming days, because as well as the car that I'm going to get to in a second, but also the ones I've already discussed and Spa itself, I am of course going to be doing much more in-depth reviews discussing the specs and how good they are, etc. of all 4 cars in the coming days, and I'll also be tuning them as well. So be sure to stick around for that, but of course, last and definitely not least, we have the car that we've all been waiting for, really. Since day one, it's such a highly requested machine. It really is an occasion where Kaz has just clued into the community and given us exactly what we all needed. And I predict that as of this car's arrival, we will no longer see any negative comments about the lineup in the game whatsoever, because it really has been capped off now. If no more cars are added, this really is the one to end on. And that is, of course, the Mazda Demio. But as always, thanks for watching.